Hello, I'm Jim Cornwall, and this is the WalkingPost.com podcast. WalkingPost.com is the news website dedicated to walking with all the latest on gear, health, books, fitness, festivals, events, trails, and more. This podcast is number 44, and it's raining. Again. So much for filming this weekend. The podcast is going live on March the 13th, 2 consecutive months with Friday the 13th. I did manage to get out and test some new camera equipment on Sunday and promptly broke the stick it was attached to, and then the other stick got stuck. And apparently the bridge that we walked over, which we do quite often, is going to be replaced or repaired, and it's going to take 3 months. And just to explain, it's maybe 20 feet across and about 12 feet wide. We're not talking about the Menai Straits or the Brooklyn Bridge here. And don't even get me started on roadworks. Emphasis not on the word work. I guess it's the same the world over. Let's get to March the 13th. It is Good Samaritan Day, Smart and Sexy Day, and sadly I can't be both, although my family would argue I'm neither. And they're probably right. It's also World Sleep Day, which seems a bit odd. It's Dermatologist Day too, and it's the day that the planet Uranus was discovered. No jokes, please. It's also the day that the discovery of Pluto was announced, although to announce it you probably had to have discovered it beforehand. Now it's not even a planet anyway, it's been downgraded like Prince Andrew. Birthdays, well, we have Neil Sedaka, who sadly died recently, and Pope Innocent XII. Imagine if that was your name. Every time you greeted somebody, you'd say, "Hello, I'm Innocent," and the other person would give you an odd look and say, "I didn't accuse you of anything." As far as interviews go, we're stuck in the mountains. We went from Kilimanjaro to Everest last week with Graham Hoyland, and this week the Matterhorn gets a mention, because we're talking to ultramarathoner Ekaterina Preobrazhenskaya about her trip to the Alps hiking with her children. And I think anyone with children will totally relate to her story. Before we get going, if you do have news, guest ideas, or even subjects to cover, or comments, or you want to advertise, please get in touch via walkingpost.com or just email me at jim@walkingpost.com. Okay, let's get through some of the headlines of the news articles you may have missed that we had on walkingpost.com this past week. 2 Maidstone residents were recognised for creating a new 42-mile trail. New shoes marketed as being for real feet have landed in 450 stores. Hard for me to relate to that one, as I always get strange looks when I ask for shoes and tell them I'm a size 14. Taiwan has been attending travel shows in North America, and the country is showcasing its Adventures Await slogan for hiking. The Eurosteps Walking Challenge has been launched, and the Bristol Walk Fest, which takes place across May, now has 148 walks planned, although not all on the same day. Parks Canada has introduced a reservation system for parking to protect a very popular Nova Scotia trail. There's a new trail with the poetic name of GR226, and that has opened on the eastern side of the island of Mallorca. And Teva has unveiled its Spring 2026 collection. REI Co-op introduced its Spring 2026 gear and apparel, so clearly 'tis the season for new gear. We also, yet again, updated our 2026 hiking festivals page, and you can read all of these and many more at walkingpost.com. And that brings us relatively neatly into this week's guest. And the guest this week is Ekaterina Preobrazhenskaya, also known as Kate, who lives in London, and she is a runner. She's also the chief training architect of the Marathon app that she co-developed, and it's called Hiiro. Not the kind of hero that you look up to or one that saves somebody, but it is spelt Hiiro. As I mentioned, she's a runner or an ultramarathon runner, and she is a certified running coach with more than 7 years of experience. And she's also the CEO and head coach of international running school Marathonica. Anyway, let's get to the conversation because Kate got in touch with a story about her hiking trip to the Alps. And it's a must listen. As I said earlier, anyone with children will definitely understand. And you'll probably feel better about your vacations too. Rather than explain, we'll leave that to Kate. Hi Kate, thanks for being on the podcast with us this week, and I'm really interested to hear your story about your trip to the Alps.
Right. Well, to start with, I'm a long distance runner. So to me, and I mean, long distance runner and more of a trail runner. So to me, being in the mountains, I never really do, like, I don't climb the mountains on the peaks themselves, but I love running, like trail running and doing it in the mountains. So that is like really familiar to me. And as a rule, I always think that, well, I really need to take my kids to the mountains at least once a year so that they have this bit of a holiday, not just by the sea and, by the beach, the kind of the, let's say, normal way of it, but to have like a bit of an adventure and to actually hike and, maybe run a bit in the mountains. And I've been doing this for quite a few years already. And I mean, generally, my daughter, she doesn't really want to come with us because she is older. She is like now she's 15 already. But my son, this year he is 10. Last year, sorry, I mean he is 10 now. And he was 10 when all this happened. He like is much more of a fan of the mountains. So we have this shared passion. I can't say that he enjoys like doing really long hikes, but anyways, for quite a few years, like maybe for 4 or 3 consecutive years before that, before 2025, we've been doing some hikes with him, but we would come to one place, stay there, let's say in some Airbnb, and then just do like day hikes somewhere. And then 2024, we went to Austria, and on one of the hikes, he said, "Mom, I think I'm actually ready to do a point-to-point hike." Every summer, I usually run some kind of a distance, just like a holiday, a multi-day thing. So I do ultramarathons as races, but that's more of like a holiday for me. So I would pick a really long route, let's say like roughly from 150 to 200 kilometers in the mountains. I would break it up into days of 30K a day with quite a lot of climbing in it. And I would just do it on my own, just with one bag. And then I would stay in Airbnbs and hotels. So that's kind of my favorite type of holiday. And since I've done quite a few routes in the Alps, I said, well, yeah, surely we can do a point-to-point thing, not 150K, but, a much shorter distance. But it's going to be different from what we've usually done with him because it's not going to be going somewhere, coming back to the same place. It's kind of more adventurous, if that makes sense. And we would need to stay in mountain huts as well sometimes. So like he was looking forward to this the whole year. And then I planned it, arranged everything, booked all the tickets and, the hotels. I was actually asking my daughter if she wanted to go, but she would usually say, no, I'm just going to, I'm going to stay here, which is, well, I don't want to force her into that. And then last moment, a few days before we were about to like leave and, fly to Geneva, she said, yeah, I'm actually going to come. I'm like, well, fine. Like I have to rearrange some stuff, but that's fine. I mean, totally, I would want her to come with us. And I was trying to talk her into this. And so like she eventually agreed. I rearranged everything. And to me, because my kids are like very different in terms of their character, and she isn't a big fan of hiking. Like she isn't sporty. She doesn't really want to do it as much. Maybe it's the age, when you're, a teenager and a girl, it's not something that you kind of, it's not something that you want to post on TikTok, if that makes sense. I was surprised, but I was happy she's coming. And I was also kind of I talked to my son and said, well, like, because I know that myself and him, like, we're fine with hiking together and, he likes it. He can get tired, but I kind of know how to, I know my way around it. But with my daughter, who never really did any long hikes apart from just maybe once, I'm like, well, okay, fine. It all began still here in London because we had a really early flight and we were meant to leave like on a taxi at about 4 a.m. to go to Heathrow. And then obviously we were packing everything and we just had like each one bag with us. We didn't take loads of things. So I had to make sure we have everything we need. And I went to bed really late, but I thought, okay, I have like 4 hours of sleeping and my son was asleep already. And then my daughter, she comes to me and she says, Mom, I actually feel really sick. I'm like, well, come on, And every single time, because usually it's just like whenever we want to go somewhere together, something like this happens. So this time I said, you know what? This is like, it's always happening. You're going to be fine tomorrow. Just let's sleep at least a little bit. But then as I'm trying to sleep through, like, I can hear that she's actually feeling sick and she's in the bathroom, and it's like she's not making it up, and it's not just her being nervous or anything. And then I come to her and she, like, I can see that she's actually feeling really bad. But I realize that if she's not coming, like, if I have to cancel everything, because she says, can I actually stay? I'm like, well, no, you can't. I'm not leaving you here in the middle of the night feeling so bad and just, going with your brother and you're staying here. I mean, you could have stayed if we arranged it this way. She would have stayed with her stepdad. So it's, yeah, no problem at all. But I was like feeling that if she is sick, if she's feeling so bad and she was, she had to go, I have to actually take her with me. So I was trying to talk her into coming. She was saying, no, I'm not coming. But eventually she agreed, because usually by the end of the day, she's fine. So it was quite a nightmare of a flight, because she was actually feeling really bad. But then she fell asleep on the plane. I was like thinking, okay, maybe it's actually going to be fine. I thought maybe I'm just going to, adjust the routes a little bit, make them a little bit shorter sometimes. We can use a chairlift sometime instead of climbing the mountain. But it seemed to be getting better. So she's like, because I know her, that she is a kind of a person who just needs to lie down, sleep. And in the end of the day, she's going to be okay. So we went to Geneva. We took a train to Verbier, where everything started. And the route was a part of the haute route, which is 180K. I mean, it's like a very famous route from Chamonix in France to Zermatt in Switzerland. And it's called haute route, which is high road in French, because basically it's a route, in the mountains rather than just, somewhere in the valleys. And you go up some, mountain passes, you go back into the valleys. So I've done it a few years before that. I ran it myself. So I was pretty much familiar with the route. And I thought that I broke it up into days which are doable for the kids. So we arrived in Verbier. My daughter went to bed, and I'm like, okay, fine. Tomorrow she's going to wake up. Everything's going to be more or less okay. We're just going to take the first, chairlift, and then we're going to be up in the mountains already. There's not a lot of elevation, and it's like a 15K route. Like, we had to do 15K and get to a mountain hut. But I was obviously a little bit worried, like, what's happening and if she's going to be fine. But in the morning, she wakes up. Obviously, she's weak, but she's saying, yeah, like, I can do it. It's not like that bad. I'm feeling way better. And I thought maybe she's eaten something wrong the day before, or maybe she was eating something too fatty. So, it happens. So we went up the chairlift, and then from there, we started our hike, got ourselves like a few sandwiches just to have with us. And then we were meant to sleep in a mountain hut that day. And obviously, we started much later than we wanted to initially, because I thought the longer she sleeps, the better. So I didn't want to wake her up. I thought when she wakes up, that's the time we're going to start the hike, because it's only 15K. We are going to make it before the night, because it was end of July, I think. So it was, the sun was up until roughly 9 or 10. So I thought we're pretty safe. We're definitely going to make it, even if we start late. And that's what we've done. Like, we went up the chairlift, we started the hike. And then, surprisingly, my daughter was doing pretty well. She was, despite the fact that she's never really, like, she always said she hates hiking and she hates, any kind of sport. And she was always looking at me and saying, Mom, this is just not normal what you're doing in the mountains. And all of a sudden, despite the way she felt the day before, on the hike, she's pretty much okay. She's like with her music, somewhere in front of us with her, hiking poles. And I'm like, well, okay, it's not going to be that bad. But surprisingly, I can see that my son starts moaning and kind of, saying that he's tired much sooner than I expected. And then it's really hard for him to, climb the rocks, because sometimes I forgot that bit had so many like pieces, so many parts, when there are just rocks which you have to like jump from one rock to another. I mean, it's doable, but it is slowing you down. And the thing is that on that first day, since we had to stay in the mountain hut, we didn't have any other places to kind of, we weren't passing through any villages. We were up in the mountains all the time, up until the mountain hut. So we just had everything with us, just the water, just a few sandwiches, some snacks, and that was it. And we're like walking. And I just feel like we're really slow. We're super slow, mostly because of my son, although it's not his first hike and he is supposed to be fine. And, like the whole experience is like, it feels not as a joyful hike, but it feels like something's wrong. And there were some moments, like it was almost the day when everything goes wrong. Like there were some moments when, let's say, there were some animals up in the, like up above us, and then somehow they weren't throwing rocks, obviously, but because of their movement, the rocks were falling down, which I've done so many things in the mountains. I know this can happen, but it never really happened to me. And I was already like thinking, okay, I'm alone here. We hardly met anyone because this part of the route isn't like, maybe this is not the most popular one. I'm alone in the mountains together with two kids. One of them was feeling sick yesterday, like the day before, and we're moving super slow. And I'm trying to tell, and the way I remembered the route, and I was actually like, I was genuinely saying what I felt, that it's gonna get easier, easier, and easier. But in reality, it was getting harder, harder, and harder. And at some point, I can see that my son, he's like super slow, and he's not really like, it's not that he's not saying that he's not feeling well, but I can see that he's always scared of things. And that's not typical for him. Usually he's very different on the hikes. Probably we had like 5K left, and it was already something like maybe 8 o'clock. So I was starting getting worried that it's going to get dark. And there was this last climb, as I remember. I say to kids, okay, we've done most of the climbs. There is just one very short one. And then afterwards, we're going to have to go down, and it's going to be pretty flat, and it's going to be nice. So don't worry. And we're surely going to make it before dark. And then when we approached the climb, which isn't actually too high compared to what we've done before, I realized that it has changed quite a bit. So probably there was a stone fall. And the route isn't even marked properly at that time because probably it was pretty recent. And I realized that my kids I'm already carrying like 2 rucksacks because my son can't carry his anymore. And I realized that it's going to be super challenging. And they're not eating anything the whole day for whatever reason. They just don't want to. I mean, it's obvious why my daughter isn't eating anything, because she didn't feel well, but my son isn't eating anything as well. Myself as well, because I'm just too worried and I'm kind of stressed. And I mean, the whole day I'm just trying to entertain them somehow to make it feel better than it is. And I was also worried that, well, that's like their experience of hiking in the mountains, and they're going to remember it this way for the rest of their life and maybe never want to go back again. And the time when we start climbing, it's on those rocks in the middle of the climb, and it's a pretty hard one, my son starts throwing up. Literally right there. I realized that probably what my daughter had, it's not just, some food poisoning, but obviously it's like kind of a stomach bug, or maybe stomach flu or something like that. And I realized that the way I saw that she felt the day before, and she could hardly even get herself to a taxi. And now I realize that my son has got the same thing, and he's been walking the whole day in the mountains. So we got to the climb, to the very top of it, and then I realized that the downhill is super steep as well. So I think that was the moment when I was thinking, oh my God, why did I actually bring them here? Because that actually felt really dangerous, especially keeping in mind that both of them are really weak. I mean, my daughter was more or less fine at the time, but my son obviously felt terrible. So of course we were moving super slowly, like super slow downhill, because my daughter could do it on her own, but I literally had to help my son because I was just afraid that whatever, he feels weak and it's a really steep downhill. So he needs some help from me. We got down there, we did walk over that flat, and it took us enormously long, not as I expected. We did get to the mountain hut already, like I think literally with the last rays of light. And we didn't have any torches because I didn't bring the torches, because the way I estimated everything, it was pretty much like the distances weren't that great. And I was sure that end of July, we will definitely have enough daylight to complete those distances in daylight. So torches seemed like, extra burden to carry. Thank God we made it to the mountain hut. And as my daughter, because she was a bit in front of us, and as she describes, because like at the very end, there was a bit of an uphill to get to the mountain, like a tiny bit actually. It's just a sort of a tiny hill that the mountain hut itself is situated on. But to us, it already felt like a huge, mountain. And as she described, she was literally climbing it, almost like using her arms already and hands. And then, like in those horror, and there were people standing near the mountain hut. And I think that for them, it maybe felt like, in one of those horror movies when somebody suddenly climbs out like from behind the stone. But I mean, thank God we made it there. We were also lucky that, but I did the booking in advance and I wrote to them and they said, we're actually fully booked, but you can take like a separate room just for the three of you, which we're not using anymore. It can be a bit colder than usual. It's not heated, but then, it's end of July, so it's not that bad. And thank God we stayed in a separate room rather than, like in a mountain hut, you would have like 12 people just sleeping in one room, because I think it would have been a nightmare because both of my kids were feeling pretty sick during the night. And that's one of those mountains huts when you don't have showers, like you only have like taps and toilets and that's it. They can come different, like some mountains huts have, warm showers and everything. That one didn't, because it is actually very isolated. Like it's in the middle of literally nowhere. The nearest is going back to Verbier or going to Arona in Italy, which was the plan for the next day, which is like 20 something K, an amazingly beautiful hike, most of it flat along a very beautiful lake in the mountains. But obviously I understood we're not doing it. And we ate something. They gave us some food. My kids didn't really want to eat much. I ate a bit and we went to bed. They didn't feel well, especially my son. And so during the night, I realized there's no way where we can make it to, Arona. And going back to Verbia didn't make any sense because it would have been just the same day, just the same distance, similarly difficult climbs just on the way back. So I was trying to come up with a solution here. And it wasn't even me trying to stick to actually doing the hike. It was me trying to understand what's the best way out of here. And obviously, you can't grab a taxi or just, there is no other access to that place other than by foot. I was looking at the map and I realized that because we were going to go along the lake for maybe like 10K along the lake, and basically the mountain hut is situated like at the very, let's call it like beginning of the lake, because it's like a long oval kind of a lake. I've realized that if we go along the other way along the lake, it's about 5K to a place where there is a hotel, there is a dam there and a hotel, and there is a bus stop there. So I thought, well, probably 5K is doable. And most of it, like there would be a little climb at the beginning, but then mostly downhill. I thought, okay, we'll do that. We'll still see the lake after all. And we're going to go to the bus stop and grab a bus and then go to Sion, I think it was. So, like how in the mountains, there is a road along the valley and then you can go into like different other bits on other roads. But then what we had to do is go all the way to the road by bus, take a train, and then to get to the next place where we're meant to walk to Arona, we would like also grab a bus. But that was a solution still. Like we had our night booked there. And I thought, well, fine, 5K, then buses, trains, that's doable. So that's what we did. In the morning, my kids were super happy that we're not doing a 20K hike. So my son was still feeling unwell, better. Like my daughter was actually more or less fine by that time already. She was actually, like I'd say, completely fine. Like she ate her breakfast. She was feeling obviously a little bit weak because she hasn't eaten anything for like 2 days. But, after breakfast, she felt completely fine. But my son, he was still pretty weak and we moved slowly. And so we went along the lake and then there was already a road, like a paved road going down and a little lift. But the lift wasn't working. And I thought, well, okay, it's June. Maybe it's not even meant to be working. It's a tiny little lift, just, going from the lake down to the bus stop and the hotel. So I thought, well, fine, maybe it's not exactly the main touristic period here. And, nothing popped up in my head at that particular moment. So we walked along that road, basically a proper road. It was much easier to walk than on stones. We got down to the hotel, but as we were walking, it already felt a little bit strange because there was just one car parked in front of the hotel. There were those, umbrellas standing there that you'd usually get like at a coffee, like at a cafe or something. But there wasn't anyone to be seen, not a single person. And I felt like, well, morning, maybe there aren't many people staying in the hotel. It's just, it's a hotel near a dam. So it's not something, probably not the top destination in Switzerland. So we went down and we arrived there, and that's exactly where the bus stop was. And there's like this tourist information center, and it's all empty and closed. I get to the hotel door and there is light inside. The Wi-Fi is working. I mean, obviously, I don't know the password, but I can see on my phone that there's a hotel Wi-Fi which is working, but the door is closed. And there are a few notes written in French, which at first I didn't even look at them, whatever, it's just a little, piece of paper there. And we have something like half an hour before the bus, according to the schedule. And I checked on every single app, really, on Google Maps, on some bus app that I had, like a Swiss bus, timetable app where you get the tickets as well. And I felt like, well, fine, maybe we should wait here and the bus is going to arrive. But it already felt like it's something's wrong here. Like, it can't be that there's literally not a single person here. The hotel is closed. Everything's closed. It felt absolutely abandoned, like 100%. It actually felt a bit like zombie apocalypse, if that makes sense. Also because like the weather played a bit of a role here, because before that it was sunny and then there were clouds in the sky, a bit of rain. And also the fact that the parasols are there, everything's there, the tables are there, but there is no one. So it felt like people had to all of a sudden leave the place. It actually felt really creepy. And of course, my kids, they got like, they started to get scared a little bit because it actually felt not okay. Obviously, the bus didn't arrive in half an hour. And I was trying to get the signal because it was, the Wi-Fi, I didn't know the code, the password. I was trying to get the signal because it's also roaming, and usually I just have data roaming, so I can't really make phone calls, because I found a taxi number. So I thought, okay, maybe I just grab a taxi, they arrive here, and we're gonna go to the nearest train station by taxi. Oh, and then I just thought I should walk around a bit more and read the notes. And then I translated the note in French that was hanging on the entry to the hotel. And it said that because of the rockfall on the road leading up to there, everyone had to leave, and like there is no access to the hotel. So at that point, I realized that myself and my two kids, one of whom is feeling really unwell, and the other one just recovered from having felt unwell, after a crazy day before that we had in the mountains, I'm just on my own, cut off from any civilization, and there's no way my kids could be going up back to the mountain hut. And to be honest, even if we would sort of summon all our strength and get back to the mountain hut, they didn't have places there, and there was no use at all, because what would we do another night there? It's like either walking all the way to Arona, which would be 20k, or Verbia. So it didn't really make sense to go back there and spend the night there, because like, what can we do? So I was thinking of solutions, how to get out of there. Actually, I called the 112, the services, and they said, well, yes, there is a rockfall. You can either get a helicopter. And I said, well, is that the only solution, like getting a helicopter? They said, yeah, that's the only solution. And they literally hung up. I promise you, they just hung up. So they said, I explained the situation to them. Obviously, they understood that no one's dying in that particular moment. But then get a helicopter, or like, we don't know what you could do. And they just hung up. Like, to me, that was, I am calling 112 to understand what to do, and they're just hanging up on me. But anyways, I thought, fine, maybe another solution would be actually walking along the road to the next bus stop, from where maybe there is a connection to the train station. And it was, I looked at Google Maps, 5k away. I thought maybe they can make it, like, because it's just a road, it's pretty flat. But then I called the 112 again, and I said, well, what about the rockfall? Like, how dangerous it is? And they said, well, we can't advise you on this. It is closed. There has been a rockfall, so we can't tell you anything. And I felt like maybe on my own I would have attempted it. But once again, with the two kids, I'm not going to venture on a road which, has been under the rockfall recently, and, only God knows what's going to be happening. And of course, you're there, you also hear all those noises of rocks falling down, and you're in this valley, and it actually felt extremely creepy. I started asking ChatGPT how much a helicopter would be. And obviously it came up with sums like from five, like they said, it said, well, usually it's something from 5 to 10,000 Swiss francs. And I'm like, God, that's going to be a very expensive hike for me. But at the end of the day, I just realized there is nothing else I can do other than get a helicopter, like a rescue helicopter, because, what else can I do? I can't go back up to the mountain hut. We're exhausted. We don't have water. We don't have food on us anymore, like maybe just a few tiny little snacks. There is no other way we're getting out of there. No buses or taxis or whatever is ever going to, no people are ever going to come here. Not ever, but until, they clear out the rockfall. So we grabbed the helicopter eventually. In a way, now that I'm thinking back, it is a bit of an adventure. Of course, at the time, I was counting the money and I was thinking, oh God, like, why am I here at all? Like, and why couldn't I have somehow found out? Like, I could have maybe asked in the mountain hut, does it make sense to get to that bus stop? But I relied so much on the apps that I thought, well, I've checked in a few places, everything's working. The web page, I even checked the web page of Swiss buses. So it's not that I just looked at Google Maps and haven't checked anything. I actually checked all the schedules and timetables, and it never said anywhere that there's a rockfall. Probably the mountain hut would have known, because in the mountains you would always they would always know what's going on around them. So that was a bit of like stupid of me not having asked. So I was blaming myself that I got us into this situation, but I was just there. So we got the helicopter, and to be honest, like now looking back at it, it feels like it was a little bit fun in terms of it wasn't calling a rescue helicopter when something has actually happened to you. So no one was injured, but we still got this flight. It was a bit of fun. So we got all the directions, what we had to do. Like you have to stand at a certain place. You have to put, like, when you see the helicopter approaching, you have to put your hands up and stand in a certain position, wave your hands a certain way. And there was enough space to land there. There's like there was a huge bus parking there, and like parking for cars, so that wasn't a problem. When they landed, like they said to stay where we are. One of the people from the helicopter came to us, grabbed me, and the kids stayed where they were. So I had to go to the helicopter. They give you the headphones because you can't otherwise it's hard to talk to each other because you wouldn't be able to hear. So I sort of explained the situation to them, and they said, "Where do you want to go?" I'm like, "Well, we are heading to Arona, actually. So maybe we can get there." And they're like, "Well, but you're paying. It's kind of a very expensive taxi." I'm like, "Yeah, but what are the other options?" And they said, "Well, the base of the helicopters, like of their service, it's in Sion, and that's exactly where the train station that we were heading to was. So they said it's going to be much cheaper for you if you just go back to to our base." So yes, we got into to the helicopter, and my son, he is absolutely fascinated with airplanes and helicopters and things like that. And it felt like at that particular moment, he actually started feeling really well. Like I think everything that was before there just completely disappeared. He was super happy. It took us maybe like 2 minutes to get to the base. I was asking where I could pay. You can't pay there. So they just grab your address, like a physical, not even an email, just a physical address. They don't want your phone number. They don't want your email. They just want your passport, like the details from your passport and your physical, post address. And I said, "So what's happening then?" They said, "Well, we'll send you an invoice." I said, "Well, fine. Maybe you grab my email just in case an invoice doesn't reach me in the UK. But they said, no, like we know the procedure, you're going to get an invoice. So we got into the train bus after that, and we got to Italy, to, the place we were going to sleep over. But that's not even the end of the story, because what happened next was I went for a run because I felt like, okay, my son is feeling better. My daughter as well. Both my kids had their dinner, and I thought, fine, I just need get everything out of my head. And that was just an absolutely amazing run. I really felt good, like really strong. Everything was perfect. I thought, okay, fine, we're sort of past it. We have agreed with the kids that next day we're going to take buses and a train again. So we'll miss one more day of hiking just so that they can fully recover. So it kind of felt like everything's, falling into place already. So it's maybe like the rest of the time. I think we had 3 more days in front of us to get to Zermatt, where we were heading. So I thought maybe the last part of it is actually going to be okay, because the plan, like we were meant to hike the next day, but we decided that we're not doing it. And then the day after was a planned pause, because I felt like, they would need, like even when I was planning it, I felt they'd need 1 day, and then 2 more days of just walking. But what happened next was that on that night, it got to me eventually. I can't remember when I felt as bad in my life before that. I felt so terrible. I have got no idea how both of my kids managed to, like one of them get into the plane and fly to Geneva from London, and how my son actually walked the whole day in that state, because I felt so bad. I literally could hardly just get out of the bed. I mean, next day, as we have agreed, we took the bus, and all those mountain roads on buses isn't exactly where you want to be when you're feeling extremely sick. So we got to the next place, and my kids were already like, they were feeling well. They were actually completely fine. So whatever it was probably some kind of a stomach bug or maybe stomach flu. But I figured that it lasted for 24 hours, like the main bit of it. And then like before that, you feel completely fine because it was just like a switch. Like I felt really good running the day, like the night of the evening before the night. And then at night, I felt so bad I could hardly move. So we got to our next stop. And my kids were like, oh, there's a golf course here, like mini golf. Let's go, let's do mini golf or let's do a quest. And they're like, oh, they already want to do all those activities. And I'm feeling, oh my God, all I want to do is check into the hotel and just lie on the bed and do nothing. And somehow by 6 p.m. that day, once again, almost like a switch was pressed and I felt fine again. The rest of the days were pretty much fine. Thank God we got to Zermatt. We had 2 more days of just properly hiking. There were like 10 Ks, each of them. We took a very beautiful stretch of haute route, which is called, I think it's called Europaweg, something like that. So it's basically traversing above the valley, then it's like leading you to Zermatt, which is a very beautiful village in Swiss mountains where you have Matterhorn and everything. And we stayed there for a few more days, and like the rest of the time on that hike and after the hike was pretty much good. Yeah, and the invoice obviously arrived, and it arrived like in a month or 2 months time, and I was already hopeful, well, maybe they're never going to send me an invoice. I mean, it wasn't that bad, not as bad as I expected. It was nearing, I think it was to 2,700 Swiss francs, which is about 2,500 pounds. I mean, it's not, it's not something that you would want to pay, but at least it wasn't 10,000 or anything. But probably the numbers that ChatGPT was giving me included time that people would need if they're actually injured, like to be put on the special beds and then, transported to the helicopter. So our flight was 2.5 minutes. You get 2,500 pounds. Well, that was a very expensive taxi. But yeah, I mean, generally that's it. But surprisingly, now, like even just recently, when we were talking about the plans for the next summer, my daughter, who before that, like she hates hiking and things like that, now she's thinking back and saying, oh, I actually enjoyed it so much. It was such an adventure. Because nothing too bad other than, the payment of 2,500 pounds, and that's, not deadly. Nothing too bad came out of it. Like everyone is eventually well, and we got to where we wanted to get, and we did have a bit of nice hiking experience, and you're still in the mountains. Probably now they're looking back at it as at an adventure, and it's something really nice because my daughter said, well, maybe we can plan something similar, just without the stomach bug for the next summer. So it's not that bad, but during like the time there, it felt to me as a mother, I felt like, why on earth have I brought my kids here? Although I know all the answers to the question why, obviously I wanted them to be in the mountains and, feel the whole spirit of adventure. And we had quite a bit of that spirit. Also, I'm thinking that, to be honest, I have like my own view on this is that mountains, they would always test you somehow. And I don't think that was a test to me, but more maybe to my daughter, who never really wanted to get to the mountains. But then eventually, as I said, she was hiking really well. But I think there's like on such occasions, philosophically, if you look at it philosophically, it's kind of like the nature and the universe talking to you in a way. But I'm happy that we have made it. Most of my work lies in the realm of running. So I have been a running coach for 8 years or 9 years already. So I do train people both for like marathons and ultras. And I'm also in a startup where we built a marathon training app called Hiiro. So that's kind of basically replication of a human coach through algorithms and AI and all sort of new technologies. So it's like super adaptive. But yeah, I do have quite a bit of experience of training people for that. And I must say that, especially for ultra marathons, the mental, like the psychological side of it can sometimes be even more important than the physical side. Like they say that you actually run an ultra with your mind rather than with your body.
When you do the training for helping ultra marathoners, does some of that training apply to like long distance trails or hikes?
Usually ultra marathons are in the mountains. So usually when you do, not all of them. Obviously, there are some road ultra marathons, like let's say Comrades in South Africa and quite a few others. But most of them would be in the mountains, just for the simple reason that it's much easier to find such a huge distance to run in the mountains. And it's just a different experience. When you think of running an ultra, it's not always running. It's like running, hiking, power walking. There is a mix of everything. Obviously, you don't run for 130K. You sometimes walk, sometimes run, sometimes crawl, whatever. I mean, as long as you keep moving. So all of that is very intertwined. So hiking and power hiking and running an ultra, this is all very, it's not the same, but it's quite similar, I would say. Maybe the attitude, like there is less competitiveness. I mean, there is no competitiveness in hiking probably, and like more stuff to carry. But I think things that you go through, and especially the feeling of like connectedness to the mountains and the universe through the mountains, I think is pretty similar. I think that's exactly why people do that. They want to feel a bit of that adventure that brings you closer to our natural way of living, if that makes sense.
I cannot really imagine going through that, although personally it would be the expense. That was an expensive trip, but then what else could you do? I'd still be having nightmares. And as I said, I'm sure most parents can relate. I remember my son turning his ankle on a walk when he was about 6 or 7, and that was also in the middle of nowhere in the desert. I was able to carry him for a while, but you do have to get back to the car somehow. Now I could carry him maybe 3 feet, although even that might be a stretch. He's about to overtake me in height, and at 6'3", I really wasn't expecting that, especially at 14. I think my worst holiday disaster, and there have been a few, was when I was in my teens. We used to go to Hornsey or Bridlington every year since I was a baby, and my mum was fed up of it. So we went to Devon, and it was amazing. The next year we decided we'd go somewhere else again, so they booked a week on a canal boat, and it was really nice, although I was really concerned in advance about how we were going to navigate the locks. And so in those good old pre-internet days, I went to the library and read up on how to get through locks. I needn't have worried. About 1 a.m. on the first night, just after we got there, my dad woke me up in a panic. He said, "Get up, get dressed, get out, quick." About 2 minutes later, the boat had sunk. He'd been woken up by a weird noise, and it was water gushing into the bottom of the boat. Apparently it was slow at first. We managed to get everything off, or they did. I just kind of stumbled onto the shore. And we basically waited until about 5 a.m, got a taxi to the train station, and then got the train home. The boat company, which at the time was a very large one that used to put out very nice glossy brochures every year, offered us a £10 refund and 10% off our next booking with them. I think that was kind of the wrong move, given they were dealing with my dad. Needless to say, he got the full refund, and we went to North Yorkshire the next year, where I fell in a river. Thank goodness all of this was in the pre-TikTok era, otherwise I would still be a meme, alongside 1,000 others over the years. So that will just about do it for this week. If you do have news, suggestions for podcast guests, please do get in touch, which you can do at jim@walkingpost.com. We are always looking for guests, whether it's a new trail, a new book, a walking festival, or someone who's done an amazing, unusual, or interesting walk somewhere. Maybe not being evacuated in a helicopter for a 2-minute journey. We've done that one. But I know there must be some other great stories out there. So I hope you enjoyed this week's walkingpost.com podcast, and I hope you'll have a great week ahead, hopefully with a walk somewhere, preferably not involving a rescue. Until next time, happy trails! Walking Post from walkingpost.com is an Air Coastal Media Limited production.